You're listening to the Go Lightly Martial Hour on freedomtalkradio.net. freedomtalkradio.net.
freedomtalkradio.net. Hello. Hi, babe.
How you doing, babe?
Well, as you can see, I'm bedecked in jewels this morning. I just had this impulse this morning since I was sorting out through my jewellery box of jewellery that I never wear, but has been given to me over the years and all those kinds of things. I thought, I'm going to put some on, and there is a reason for it. These are freshwater pearls. These were $3 from some Lifeline, that much I do remember. And these ones, I think somebody gave to me. But anyway, it looks good. That came from my sister. It's supposed to, I don't know. Anyway, all good. But why? Why do I feel this impulse to bedeck myself with jewels? I'll tell you right after I give the day and the date. It's Wednesday, the 24th of June in the year 2015. And this is from the home of the Christ, Blugum from Tugum, Brian Leonard Go Lightly Marshall, the acronym, for the Lord Jesus Christ, announced by Pope Benedict the 16th once he retired. First time March the 12th, the number of the Christ's name, 312. That was 2013, and then more formally in the apostolic letter called In Christum Credent that Pope Benedict released to the world, since the powers that be, who are actually were, have suppressed the news from the masses. As somebody pointed out yesterday, as I told him the news, it would be a runaway freight train of out of control. The powers that would no longer be in control. They're out of control anyway. I mean, they're all over the place. We've got things happening, planets coming in. Now, why the jewels? Well, everything in our lives, you know, is pathetic and prophetic. But pathetic mostly, as we went through this morning. Oh, anyway. Yesterday, as you know, Yara and I drove to Port Curtis, Gladstone area, which, thanks to the findings of Anna, the truth of the discovery of Australia, 1606, not 1770 by Lieutenant Cook or anything else. That's all total British utter fabrication and bullshit. Do I make myself clear? I'm actually reading the first-hand accounts from the log of Pedros Fernandez de Quiros, who discovered Australia on the 1st of May 1606, and then in and out of the fabulous port that he described. And what the British have said is that he ran into Santos, the Isle of Santos, supposed to be New Hebrides or Vanuatu, which is only 65 miles long anyway. So this vast continent that he wrote about in his ship's logs, as he describes the many rivers and the hills and the fruits and the people that were already living here, the place was absolutely populous. And they do not describe the Aborigines. They do say dark-skinned. However, the houses that they were dwelling in were made from timber with thatched leaf roofs. That does not describe the shanties that Aboriginal communities have lived in. It actually describes the Melanesian, the Papuan, the Torres Strait Islanders, the natives of those areas. the kinds of houses that they build for themselves. Not only that, they were using clay pots. They found flutes, musical instruments, and that they were clothed and they were very civil, well favoured. And the account is astonishing to read as he describes the beauty of the land of this port, this natural port, where ships could anchor. It was a sandy bottom. There was no fear of rocks. And the most astonishing is that he describes in De Quiros's own account, it varies a little between each that was with him, but De Quiros describes that the mouth of the harbour itself was 20 leagues. Well, 20 leagues is 60 miles, and then they talk in fathoms as well, which is 6 feet, leagues and fathoms. So he described the mouth of the harbour as 20 leagues, and that equates to 52,800 fathoms. So to multiply, to get feet from that many fathoms, we multiply it by 6 feet to 1 fathom, and of course it is 316800 feet. Hello, Lord Jesus Christ in Greek Gematria. Not only that, 20 leagues is 52800 fathoms, and that is the Gematria that for the very last verse of the Revelation, which is all about the holy city, the New Jerusalem. It has a value of 528, and it was added as a code by William Shakespeare and King James the First of Scotland, the first of England rather, the 6th of Scotland, King James Bible. They added it as a code, and it has a value of 528. Am I beginning to make sense to those of you who know how God measures his temple?
Because coincidentally, from my birth location is 698 miles.
And 698 is?
Marshall.
Uh-huh.
And I am found in the Bible 698 times.
Right. And to the hospital though, it's 697, isn't it? And what is that?
Marshall.
Marshall. And also the number of times that the word is found in the King James Bible. Hello. So we went yesterday, and of course the New Jerusalem has been covered over by the corporate beast. The Revelation, the Essene Revelation, describes the corporate beast, the oil refineries, these monsters rising up, the beasts rising up out of the sea, covered with what is described as like concrete stones, and making everything black around them. That's the oil refineries. And so you've got aluminium smelters there, you've got coal, it's a coal port, you've got quarries of many kinds. And I took photographs, still photographs on over the area from what is called Victory Park. Beautiful area, high up on the cliff. But looking straight down, I was looking at a quarry and silos of what looked to be crushed limestone. It was white powder, it looked to be crushed lime. And of course limestone is also the stone of the Revelation that we've talked about prior to this, the salts, etc., which is the basis for all life, the mineral salts found in limestone. So it was interesting. We took lots of snapshots, only not video. And I think Yar's got them set up for a slideshow on his computer. And it begins with those photographs from Victory Park. And then we travelled down a street called Lord Street, crossed over to the island in the middle of the bay that is the road they have called, get a load of this, Bryan, B-R-Y-A-N, Jordan Circuit, or Drive it was, Bryan Jordan Drive. When De Quiros and company alighted onto the land and they were describing the rivers, they named the two rivers, the Jordan and Salvador rivers.
Salvador Mundi, perhaps?
As in, yes, Salvator Mundi. Salvador being the Spanish, Salvator being the Latin. So we'll just let Yar flip through the slideshow, and I'm going to be reading from the original account that was brought to light by an Irish cardinal. All very interesting. Let me see. And we've got John Hall over in the chat room. Before I said good morning to John. Oh, hi. Diana is there as well. And Adam Yates. Good morning. Roller Skeezer. Good morning, middle of the night. Oh, you're a dedicated young man. And yeah, all right. So I'm going to read from this account from De Quiros. It's wonderful reading. And then you realise the bullshit of the English as they have, as Jews, rewritten true history. This is the discovery of Australia by De Quiros. We'll go through the timeline of it and then describe some of the areas. This is the discovery of Australia. It's a book by De Quiros in 1606, brought to us by the Australian Catholic Truth Society, by His Eminence Cardinal Moran, and the price at the time was 1 penny. Cardinal Moran presented this as debunking really the English account of history and even the Aboriginal account of history. When you read it, De Quiros, what he wrote, and those that were with him in their own logs. Pedro Fernandez de Quiros was the least of the brilliant galaxy of Portuguese and Spanish explorers who throughout 2 centuries, by their maritime skill and enterprise, won immortal fame for their respective countries and extended far to the east and to the west the limits of Christian civilization. He was a Portuguese by birth, but at the period of which we treat Portugal and Spain were united under the Spanish scepter, and hence it was under the Spanish flag and by the aid of the Spanish court that he achieved his discoveries. The most famous of his expeditions was that which led to the discovery of the Great Austral Land in 1606. By this we mean Australia. The original sources, however, which would serve to illustrate this expedition, were little better than a sealed book to English readers until Mr. W.A. Duncan, a Fellow of St. John's College, published in Sydney in 1874 the Spanish text and translation of an interesting memorial addressed by De Quiros to the Spanish monarch. A few years later, Don Zaragoza, a distinguished Spanish ecclesiastic, published at Madrid in 3 volumes the same memorial, together with several other invaluable contemporary documents illustrative of De Quiros's voyage. The learned president of the Hakluyt Society, Sir Clements Markham, has published in 2 volumes in London for the Hakluyt Society in 1904 a translation of these important records with a valuable introduction and several interesting notes. Till within the last few years, the opinion very generally prevailed that the island of Santo, the chief island of the New Hebrides, was the great land discovered by De Quiros. In the history of the Catholic Church in Australia, I ventured to dissent from that opinion, and since then several papers bearing on the subject have appeared in the public press and in the proceedings of the Geographical Society of Melbourne. I propose in the present discourse to submit the claims of Australia to be the great southern land thus discovered it 1606 by De Quiros, and the better to proceed with order in the inquiry, my remarks will be comprised under the following heads. And then he has these points. 1, I will present to you from the original narratives some extracts descriptive of the great southern land, which was discovered by the Spanish explorer. Number 2, it will be readily seen that the data furnished by these extracts are inconsistent with the claim of the island of Santo to be that newly discovered land. On the other hand, these data are found to accurately fit in with the claim of Port Curtis and the adjoining Queensland coast. Number 4, some arguments shall be considered that seem to favour the island of Santos claim. Number 5, the difficulties will be solved that are advanced against the Australian claim. Number 6, we will thus be free to conclude by presenting some interesting details of the expedition of de Quiros and of the festivities with which he and his companions inaugurated the discovery of this Australian continent. So Cardinal Moran takes his first extracts from the 8th memorial, which was presented by de Quiros himself to the Spanish king in 1607, and this was published by Sir Clements Markham. So thus de Quiros writes, quoting, the greatness of the... Now, I want this against the background of the island of Santos, that is only 65 miles long in its length. This is the main island of the New Hebrides. So this is what de Quiros has to say. The greatness of the land newly discovered, judging from what I saw, and from what the captain, Don Luis Valles de Torres, so this is de Torres, the admiral under my command, reported to your majesty, is well established. Now, listen to this very carefully. Its length is as much as all Europe and Asia Minor, as far as the Caspian and Persia, with all the islands of the Mediterranean and the ocean which encompasses, including the 2 islands of England and Ireland. That hidden part is 1/4 of the world. Here we go to the Revelation, talking about the 4 quarters of the earth. And of such capacity that double the kingdoms and provinces of which your majesty is at present the Lord could fit into it. And this without any neighbourhood of Turks or Moors, or others of the nations which are prone to cause disquiet and unrest on their borders. So de Quiros, he presents the discovered lands to be antipodal to the greater part of Africa, to all Europe, and to greater Asia. Listen to this. The houses are of wood, roofed with palm leaves. Does that sound like our Aboriginal shanties? They're little, what do they call them? They're
I don't know really.
they're little teepee style, not even. He's not describing Aborigines.
Aborigines are the most primitive people on earth.
That's right. Now, as it turns out, they were way inland. They were not on the coastal regions at all. He goes on to say that they use pots of clay, they weave cloths, and have clothing and mats of reed. They work stone marble and make flutes, drums, and spoons of varnished wood. The bread they have is made from 3 kinds of roots, of which there is great abundance, and they grow without labour, receiving no more help than being dug up and cooked. Hail the mighty yam. I love sweet potatoes. These roots are pleasant to the taste, very nourishing, and keep for a long time. I've got some in the bottom of my cupboard there that I've had now for months, and they're still ready to be eaten. Dinner tonight. They are a yard long. Now remember, the English yard is 3 feet, a bit over 3 feet. 1.5 yards thick. Actually, it is 3 feet. The fruits are numerous and good. I want you to think of this in perspective of the description of the holy city in the Revelation. Okay, where it talks about the fruits and the healings of the trees, etc., etc. The fruits are numerous and good. There are bananas of 6 kinds, a great number of almonds of 4 kinds, great oboes, I don't even know what an oboe is, that's O-B-O-S, which are of the size and taste of peaches. There you have it. Could be the nectarines. Many earth nuts, oranges and lemons, which the natives do not eat. And another great fruit. And others not less good that were seen and eaten, as well as many and very large sweet canes. The riches are silver and pearls. Hello, I just thought this morning to put on the pearls, which I saw myself, and gold which was seen by the other captain, as he says in his reports. Now I want you to think about the description again in the Revelation of the holy city. It talks about streets paved with gold. How can that be? Well, it's because people walk on it. Now what I read about Gladstone just 2 days ago, before we set off yesterday, is that in 2004 a prospector found a nugget that weighs 1,100 grams, of what is called crystalline, very unusual, a nugget of gold that was, it was almost 99999, just like 1 9 off fine gold, and at today's prices worth about 53,000 Australian dollars or more. Actually, it was 59,000 for that one nugget. And he said that he found it under one of the new suburbs of Gladstone, and it was only in 45 centimetres of soil. And apparently it's the gold field under one of the new suburbs. That was in 2004. And it was called the Providence, Providence Nugget. So, now, he goes on to say that they have goats, and there are indication of cows, cattle. I declare that all that was seen and has been described is on the sea shore, so that it may be hoped that in the heart of the country such and so great riches will be found as are foreshadowed by what has already been seen. It is to be observed that my chief object was only to seek for the great land that I found. The comfort and pleasant life in such a land might be increased by the cultivation of its black, rich soil, by the erection of brick houses, by proper clothing, by working the marble quarries from which sumptuous and elegant edifices could be raised, and a land in which there is abundance of timber for all sorts of work, where there are sites of plains, valleys and ridges, undulations, high mountains and thickets, and in which there are murmuring streams and springs, where might be erected any number of windmills, water mills, sugar mills and other water engines, salt pits and sugar plantations. The sugar canes, which grow to 5 or 6 palms and under, and the fruit in proportion, are witnesses of the richness of the soil. A slender, hard and smooth stone makes as good flints as can be had in Madrid. The bay of SS Philip and James, this is what they named the bays after the saints Philip and James, because it was May the 1st, this discovery, which are their saints' veneration days. Listen to this, and James contains 20 leagues, that is 16 miles of shore, and is quite limpid and is free to enter by day or night. It is surrounded by a large population. At a very great distance is seen by day much smoke, and at night many fires. The port of Veracruz, the Holy Cross, is so capacious that it would contain at anchor 1,000 ships. The bottom is clear and consists of dark sand. Now, this is interesting. The worm that is so destructive to ships was not seen. Ships may be anchored at any depth to 4 fathoms, midway between 2 rivers, one of them the Jordan, as large as the Guadalquivir in Seville, with a bar of more than 2 fathoms. And you can see that on the Google Maps that we've just been looking at. It's talking about a sandbar of more than 2 fathoms, which frigates and patamars may cross. Our barks entered the other river freely. Now, by this, the rivers have been renamed. I think the other river he's referring to now has been renamed the Boyne River, and took in fresh water, which is delicious in whatever part, out of the numerous streams there. The landing place extends for 3 leagues, so that's about 6 miles, rather 9 miles, and more on a strand of black pebbles, small and heavy, which would be very good for ship's ballast. The coast contains neither ruins nor rocks. The herbs on its banks are many, and you hear not the sound of the tide. And as the trees are straight and not torn, I conclude there are no great tempests in that land. Moreover, this port, besides being so airy and pleasant, has another great excellence for recreation, that from the break of dawn. Now this is very peculiar to Australia, up and down the coast. From the break of dawn you hear from a very great army of warbling birds, some having the appearance of nightingales, larks, goldfinches, and an infinity of swallows, paroquets, and a coloured parrot that was seen, besides a great many other birds of different kinds, and the shrill note of the locusts and grasshoppers. At morning and evening the sweetest smells are enjoyed from many kinds of flowers, among which are the orange and lemon blossoms, and I consider that all these and other effects are due to the excellence and regularity of the climate. At this port and bay are many excellent islands, several of which may be especially mentioned, which subtend 200 leagues. One of them, about 12 leagues distant, is 50 leagues in circumference, and is very fertile and populous. And in conclusion, sire, I say that in that bay and port a large and populous city may be built, and the people who inhabit it will readily enjoy all riches and convenience, which my small ability does not enable me to set forth. I do not exaggerate if I say that it can maintain and accommodate 200,000 Spaniards. Now listen to what he has to say about the climate. He further adds, the temperature and salubrity of the air is seen in all that has been said, and in this, that we all being strangers, none fell ill during a time of working, sweating, and being wet through, without care about drinking water while fasting, nor about eating whatever the land produced, nor by the dew or sun or moon. The sun was not very hot by day, and from midnight onwards woolen clothes were sought, and very well suffered to be worn. The natives, as a rule, are strong and stout. Some are very old. So these are the words of De Quiros himself describing the land and the inhabitants. The sweetness of the aromas. Actually, you can walk, Joel and I often walk at night time around Tugum. Now, Gladstone by road is 274 kilometres north of Tugum. At night time, walking around Tugum, you can smell the sweet aroma of all of the plants and the flowers. that grow abundantly here in the same climate as described for Gladstone, not being so far north. And I can tell you now, it is winter time. We've just passed the winter solstice, 3 days ago, June the 21st, so it's the dead of winter. And you can see that I'm in short sleeves. It is about 22, 23 degrees during the day, that is Celsius, and at night time it drops down to about 18 or 16 degrees at night time. So it's just cool enough for a blanket that we have extra on our bed, other than what we normally have throughout the rest of the year. He goes on to support that de Quiros discovered Australia, the greater continent. So this was May the 1st, 1606, and then on the 3rd of May, the description by his secretary, whose name was Belmonte Bermudez, but it was signed and authenticated by de Quiros himself. And from this narrative, this is again Cardinal Moran, I glean the following extracts. So in his own words, on the 3rd of May 1606, the 3 vessels anchored in the port with great joy, giving many thanks to God. The master of the camp was sent to examine the mouth of the river, which is in the middle of the bay, with the launch, a boat and a party of men. He tried the depth of the river mouth and found that there was no bottom, with the length of an oar and his own arm. He went further up in the boat, and the view of the river gave much pleasure to those who were with him, as well for its size and the clearness of the water as for its gentle current and the beauty of the trees on its banks. Again, I am mindful of the river of life, the description in the holy city, the Jordan, in the Revelation. They landed and found a small village. They also found a flute and certain small things worked out of pieces of marble and jasper. Hello, jasper is mentioned in the Revelation. The bay has a circuit of 20 leagues. At the entrance, 4 leagues across, so that's 12 miles across, but a circuit of 20. In the middle there is a river which was judged to be the size of the Guadalquivir at Seville. At its mouth the depth is 2 and more fathoms, so a fathom being 6 feet, so at its depth it's 12 or more feet, so that boats and even frigates could enter. It received, so this river that they're talking about, it received the name of the Jordan. On its right, listen to this very carefully. We have said to you before, this is the land of the southern crossing. Hello, a great big clue there. On its right is seen the southern cross in the heavens, which makes the spot noteworthy. To the eastward, at the corner of the bay, there is another moderate-sized river that they called Salvador, to which now that river today is called the Boyne River. It's been renamed. So the Jordan is the main body of water, and today on the maps you can't even see that it's referred to as the Jordan, or even, you know, what the name of it. But anyway, so the Jordan and the Salvador renamed Boyne, into which the boats entered at their pleasure to get water. The waters of both rivers are sweet, pleasant and fresh. The one is distant from the other 1.5 leagues, so that's about 4.5 miles, consisting of a breach of black gravel with small heavy stones, excellent for ballast for a ship. Between the 2 rivers is the port. The bread they use is mainly of roots. The rind is grey, the pulp murrey colour, yellow or reddish. Some much larger than other yams. These are the sweet potatoes. There are some 1.5 yards in thickness, also 2 kinds, one almost round and the size of 2 fists, more or less. Their taste resembles the potatoes of Peru. The inside of the other is white, its form and size of that of a cob of maize. When stripped, we call it sweet potatoes, and yes, you do have the dark golden colour or the white, and I prefer those over ordinary potatoes. Our people ate a great deal, and being of a pleasant taste and satisfying, they left off the ship's biscuit for them, the biscuit being like a scone made from flour, etc., they left off for the sweet potatoes. These roots last so long without getting bad that on reaching Acapulco, those that were left were quite good. We heard when on board at early dawn a sweet harmony from thousands of different birds, apparently buntings, blackbirds, nightingales and others. The mornings and afternoons were enjoyable from the pleasant odours emitted from trees and many kinds of flowers, together with the sweet basil. A bee was also seen, and harvest flies were heard buzzing. This is the secretary, continues, the climate appeared to be very healthy, both from the vigour and size of the natives, as because none of our men became ill all the time we were there, nor felt any discomfort nor tired from work. I am able to say with good reason that a land more delightful, healthy and fertile, a site better supplied with quarries, timber, clay for tiles, bricks for founding a great city on the sea, with a port and a good river on a plain, with level lands near the hills, ridges and ravines, nor better adapted to raise plants, and all that Europe and the Indies produce could not be found. No port could be found more agreeable, nor better supplied with all necessaries, without any drawbacks, nor with such advantages for dockyards in which to build ships, nor forests more abundant in suitable timber, good for futtock timbers, houses, compass timbers, beams, planks and yards. Nor is there any other land that could sustain so many strangers so pleasantly, if what has been written is well considered. Nor does any other land have what this land has close by at hand, and in sight of its port, for quite near there are 7 islands, with coasts extending for 200 leagues, apparently with the same advantages, and which have so many and such good signs that they may be sought for and found without shoals or other obstacles, while nearly halfway there are other known islands, with inhabitants and ports where anchorages may be found. I have never seen anywhere where I have been, nor have heard of such advantages. If we look across the coast of Spain, so good a port will not be found. It is to be noted that a cross, which had been left on the banks of the river Salvador, was found raised in its place, and that the natives had put branches and flowers round it. And then he goes on to describe that coming out of the port for the departure, owing to the force of the wind, the ship having little sail on and her head XEX, lost ground to such an extent that we found ourselves 20 leagues to leeward of the port, all looking at those high mountains with sorrow at not being able to get near them. And then it talks about their return to Acapulco. The cross of orange wood was presented to the church of the Franciscans, and that was on the 8th of December, which happens to be the birth date of Mary, Queen of Scots. It goes on, and then it refers to de Torres, who was second in command, addressed a letter to the king, giving some account of the voyage and of its various incidents. So it goes on, and talking about how far they actually sailed south to the 30 degrees, actually over to the 31 degrees south, which is well into New South Wales, without finding an end to the coastline. So the point is that it was the 14th of May that they made the declaration on the Feast of Pentecost. The timeline is here as the 2nd of May. It was the 1st of May that they discovered the discovery, being the day of those apostles. Yes, he writes that the bay received the names of St. Philip and St. Joseph the 1st of May, the day of discovery being the day of those apostles. The 2nd of May, the general said there are signs of great things in that bay. It goes on the 4th of May at 2 in the afternoon. Our general went with the 2 boats, etc. Talks about the hills high and low with beautiful plains. and riding on horseback over them. The 5th of May, our boat went further along the coast and discovered another river. So this is the two rivers, being the Jordan and the Salvador, that they named them. And then the 8th of May, our tender went to examine the coast and reported that they had coasted along and had seen beautiful plains and rivers. The 10th of May, we returned to the shore, and marching inland came to their houses. This is the many natives that were always there, finding the houses abandoned. From the sea by the inland forest, the distance is about half a league, so that's 1.5 miles. Round the houses, listen to this, were many fruit trees with intertwined palisades by reason of the great quantity of pigs. All was very well arranged, the houses and yards being very clean. We found many fruits and trees of different sorts. The road is very clean and well shaded, and there are beautiful streams of water. From midnight until morning there is a pleasant coolness which makes a blanket welcome. So it's describing the cleanliness of the natives who are already living there, both their houses and their yards and their roads, and these palisades for the great quantity of pigs. Well, all throughout the islands in Papua New Guinea and Fiji, etc., they grow pigs. That's what they do. It's another form of trade. And then we get down to the 14th of May, the Feast of Pentecost. He gives the names of the municipality and officers appointed for the new city to be founded. So this was that declaration that you've all read on this day, the Feast of Pentecost. Goes on to May the 17th. We climbed up high mountains very silently. From the top we discovered a beautiful plain, and then on descending to it we found much nutmeg and almonds of a different kind, for the rind smells like an apple. It describes a nectarine. The 19th of May, in the morning and the day before at night. Oh, this is interesting. The 19th of May. This day in the morning and the day before at night, there were great tremblings of the earth, some of them lasting an hour, and we felt them on board our ships, as if they were bumping on some rock. From this we concluded that there are such great earthquakes, it must be the mainland, as it also seemed from the mountain ranges. As soon as we came on board, our general wanted a party to go and fish at the great river, to which the name of Jordan was given. The river whence we got the water was named Salvador. Then May the 20th, we went to the river Jordan, which is 2 leagues from the port where the ships were at anchor. Our people found great quantities of fruit trees and much food with which these natives are well supplied. Great quantities of fish were caught. Ships might enter this river if they were built like the frigates of Carthagena. May the 28th, we started in the morning. Now this is interesting. This is May, so it's the 5th month, 28th, 528, and we're talking about the last verse of the Revelation, which is all about the holy city, the New Jerusalem. We started in the morning, coasting along the land to windward, that is to southeast and east-southeast, to make out for certain whether it was the mainland. May the 29th, on account of many of the crews being sick from eating poisoned fish, they returned to the bay. This was 7 o'clock in the morning, and by 4 o'clock in the afternoon the ships had anchored. This was good luck, for the distance from the entrance to the bay to the anchorage is 6 or 7 leagues, and the first time we were 3 days working up. And that goes to June the 5th, which is the birth date of Ya's grandfather. Hello, babe. Ya's grandfather on June the 5th in 1881. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And it talks about how they were to start the next day to examine 200 or 300 leagues of coast. So they're willing to examine 600 miles of coast, surveying all, laying down positions of ports and anchorages, etc. So it goes on and on to describe this area known as Gladstone today, naming the 2 rivers, Jordan and the other the name of Salvador. Their banks are of no small beauty, for they are full of sweet flowers and herbs. The beaches of this bay are wide, long and flat, and green hills surrounding the river, etc. It goes on and on. So we were there yesterday. Now, I tell you what, the refineries there, aluminium smelters, and I was in Gladstone years ago when I worked for our family company called Bosco. It was the refinery that I went to. They needed equipment for their computer room, and that was my job. I would go and measure, because we made custom-built equipment out of sheet metal, and we often designed what it is that they needed to house, whether it be computer data. Then they were great big discs. Today it's nothing, but you had floppy disks first, and they're great big disks for their computers. And so that's what I spent, I think it was actually 2 nights staying in Gladstone, out to the refinery, and I had to don the hard hat and the overalls to crawl through different areas and measure up for this computer room furniture. Oh yeah, well I had to roll up the sleeves, didn't I? So that was Gladstone all those years ago. That must have been the early 80s, or it might have been late 70s. But there you have it. This is where we were yesterday, and of course the numbers all over it are the distances from Yah's birthplace. That's it. The word. I am Marshall, Mars Hill. Hello, the New Jerusalem. Now, I remember years ago, when I first found Yah, in his writings to, it must have been Connie Becker on the Holy Conspiracy website, it was Yah himself that he realized in his own growing up into the wisdom, knowledge and stature of who he is, and his task was to uncover paradise that had been taken over by hell. And so here, the New Jerusalem as described by De Quiros, now with its smelters, aluminium smelters, a coal port. One of the streets I noted was Palmer, and of course you know our disdain for Clive Palmer, the great big fat git who exports Australia's coal for a $500 million a year royalty to China. He'd be using this port at Gladstone to do it, I would imagine, or it might be further north, I'm not sure. But one of the streets was named Palmer, and I thought of him. Now, while we were there, not only did we drove around the island in the middle of the harbour, which is beautiful. It's got the University of Queensland there, has a mission for seafarers, and that's where the marina is. But you know, the beauty of the area is interrupted by your refineries and stacks and, you know, the corporate beast that I photographed there. So without that, certainly the area is glorious. And up on that Victoria Point, the bougainvillea, the colour of the flowers, beautiful. So this is what they were seeing in its raw beauty. And the interesting thing is that they were describing later in one of the other reports, they describe the colour of the skin of the natives as dark. They don't say black. They don't, but they were clothed and they weaved cloth. So they're not describing the Aborigines, which apparently came from the west in the arid lands of the middle of Australia, which is all arid. It's desert, Simpson Desert. They came later to the area as the natives themselves were pushed up and back towards where they came from, which of course is Papua New Guinea. Now, what's interesting is that with all of these revelations is we told you that Jamie showed us his Australian citizenship. Anybody born before independence, which was 16th of September 1975, is automatically an Australian citizen, and Jimmy showed us proudly and thanked Yah for his Australian citizenship. So they were pushed back, all of these areas, and you heard the descriptions of the populous areas. There were multitudes already there, living in their very clean houses and yards and well-maintained roads, living off the fruit of the land, the water of the rivers. And they were strong and healthy, living to a ripe old age. So what has happened since? You're going to Port Moresby, where they're dying of what? Western foods, Western culture, the British, through the Aussies, go and ran the administration there for years, and then pulled out, leaving the nation like a fatherless child, only to rape and pillage the natural resources. Marcus Samari, 1989, a new covenant with the Jews who call themselves Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. Israel today, the scum of the earth. He's promised their resources of Papua New Guinea to the Israelis. Hello? Is it all being fit together now? So the British, the dogs, who are Jews anyway. It was the emissary, the Vatican ambassador, the Italian that we met, sat in his office, and after he got over the shock of who he was talking to, and of course we immediately launch about the Jews, who they are, the sons of Cain, the devil themselves, he said to us, "Can you believe it, that Queen Elizabeth is a fucking Jew?"
He said that to us.
He said that to us. She's a fucking Jew. And so are all of her offspring, and Kate, of course, the new baby girl, well, her mother is a goldsmith, a Rothschild. These are the synagogue of Satan, and they are running for cover. We want them all to go underground in their tunnels, because that will become their tomb. So it's all very exciting, and that was our adventure yesterday. So on the one hand, we were not impressed by what has become of the New Jerusalem, but on the other hand, we had to do it because we enter first. Is that not right, babe? So what we did yesterday was a landmark in this period of time, and is why I'm inspired to put on my pearls and oh dear. And outside of that, we had a really good coffee at the place at Childers, run by a grandmother, daughter and granddaughter. That was kind of cute, just up the road at Childers. And the wonder of the entire day is that I said no when you said to me, "Would you like a Mamino's ice cream?" I said no.
Well, that is a miracle.
That is a true miracle.
You've been known to crawl that distance to get one.
Yes, totally, because it truly is the best ice cream on the planet. It's an Italian recipe and made with fresh macadamias grown by the family, and it is famous in this area, and it really is glorious. But I said no yesterday. I said I want a coffee. Right, guys, so what's going on out there in the chat room? You've been listening to all that I've been reading. I'll post the link for, if you haven't already got it. Yes, Ross, it is truly amazing, and it just does all fit together, of course. Now, I want Yah to be measuring all that area from the description in the Revelation, etc., because it extends. The holy city is described. And I remember a dream that Adam had years ago. This is our Adam, had years ago. And he talked about arriving at the holy city, and its edge began on the coast, on the sea, but it extended inward. And he arrived there hand in hand with Claudia, which at this point seems impossible. But the point is that he did, it's like the two of them made it, and it was over a period of time. So we're going to be measuring all that area and seeing what it... yeah, I thought that's it. I've measured enough, I'm not going any further. And today I'm saying you've got to do this, you've got to do that. And get him on the ground in New Jerusalem. The Christ and Ash on the ground in New Jerusalem Wonderbar. Yes, totally. As I say, we're going to get rid of the smelters and the all the refineries around there. They can take a hike, go somewhere else. They can be on the outside. We'll cut it off. Perhaps that's the merchants who will be from a distance weeping and wailing because Ash has said, "No way, Jose, out of here. Don't want you in my front yard or backyard. Don't want to see you."
Well, from where we stayed in New Guinea,
yes,
to that mouth is 888 nautical miles.
Oh, how about that? So from Lambden Street, yeah, to now. How's this? The place we stayed at in Port Moresby for the first week through Airbnb just happened to be on the street named Lambden, Lambden, Lambden Street. So yeah, I was just saying from that address to the mouth of the river. at the port is 8.8 nautical miles. Well, are we surprised? Of course not. And another. All right. So we drove to the area and we had lunch. We're not impressed at this like sports club thing, just to get our feel of the area. And then we drove through what turned out to be the city centre, and then we went down a hill named Lord Street. Turned out to be twice. And this took us to the bridge over onto the island in the middle, which is where the university is and the marina is. And it is beautiful. And the drive that we took was Brian Jordan Drive all around the island. So we've done our Cook's tour, and that's where I took all of the photographs. Then we're driving back through the city centre again, and the car in front of us had the frame around it of the motor car dealer that sold the car, which just happened to be named Brian Headley. Brian Headley Motors in Gladstone. And that now we're driving back out of town, so it's south to head back toward home, and we pass a park that is called Brian Niven, as in David Niven Park. Hello. So just as it was Port Moresby when we went there, it was BB everywhere, BB license plates all over the place. That was in 2008, which of course was your email address when I found you. And I'm saying, what's with the B's? Well, it was bb@pacific.net.au. Anyway, folks, that was our day yesterday. And we're almost out of time. How is Yar feeling? Adam, he's feeling much better. Do you want to let people hear?
Yeah, I do feel better, but I tell you what, I've never felt so ill.
Yeah.
When we first got back here.
Yes.
It was extraordinary.
Yeah.
On the plane before.
Hmm.
So they got me with something.
I haven't figured it out yet, although we're told...
It was almost total paralysis.
Hmm.
And aching every conceivable joint and muscle.
Hmm. And Mary told us of her two best friends that had died from poisoning by witch doctors.
Yeah, well, they have a habit of doing that up there.
Mm.
So I don't know how they quite got it into me, but I think it's probably through the car window itself.
Right.
So I'd go and start the car, and from that point onwards, you're breathing in whatever they spray into the car. Right?
Yeah, and they use all kinds of mixtures and things on clothing even. Your clothing's not safe out on clothing line, because if they want you dead, they'll put the poison on your clothing. You put them on, and then it's against the skin. So, but he is feeling much better. Adam says, I thought they could have attacked the whole flight just to get to you. Well,
I have often thought that.
Mm.
But then again, we have angelic protection.
Mm.
So, yes, they could bring a plane down any time if they wanted to.
Yeah. And they, now you started, what was the day you started to really feel off? Because we'd been there a week at the apartment.
Well, it was 4 days before we came home.
Yeah. So it was from day 7 when we moved out. That's when Mary said you look so tired, and then you had trouble sitting down at her place. And then you just got progressively worse from there.
Well, I couldn't sit, couldn't stand, couldn't lean forward, couldn't lean back. My head was just like this ache beyond description.
Yeah.
There's certainly something powerful.
Mm.
Huh? Bring it on, Lucifer.
Mm.
Now also we should mention that when we got back here, we looked at the moon, and we could see the normally when you look at the moon you can see the crescent waxing or waning, and in this case you can see the dark side of the moon, well when I say dark side of the moon, which is not lit by the sun, and something from above Australia, eastward I'd say, east, possibly a little north, was lighting the...
yes, it was transparent, wasn't it?
Well, you could see all the shape of the moon.
Yeah,
very, very clearly. Well, that indicates that there's something out there that is giving off a great deal of light. And this is why they've been chemtrailing, even over New Guinea. There's chemtrailing everywhere.
There's many now videos, and people are. It's so obvious now.
So the point is, the first gold dealer we met up there was a man who was ambassador for the Vatican.
Yes.
And he recognised me by he looked at me, he couldn't take his eyes off me. And then it was just a launch into what he had believed and searched for in 14 nations around the world, all looking for truth.
Right.
And next thing, we're sitting in his office talking to him.
Now, Diane, I'm just seeing what you posted back there in the conversation about from World Youth Day, which was in Australia. This is when Benedict was in Australia. And I remember we said he was of the devil. Remember we had the interview with the radio program that was spontaneous. That was when Benedict was in Australia, and the last thing he asked was, well, what do you think of the Pope? And you said, well, he's of the devil, isn't he? However, this is July the 15th, because we had the interview July the 16th, 2008. The pastoral visit of His Holiness Pope Benedict the 16th on his visit to Sydney on the occasion of the 13th World Youth Day. The meaning of the theme, you will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you will be my witnesses. Acts 1:8. The meaning of the Apostolic Journey World Youth Day, a moment in the history of Australia because of its location. Australia is often referred to as the end of the earth. Since its discovery in the 17th century by European explorers, it has also been referred to as Terra Australis, del Espiritu Santo. How can a journey to the end of the earth begun in the power of the Holy Spirit fail to strengthen us as witness to the land from which we come? It was Pedro Fernandes de Quiros, the Portuguese captain in the service of Spain, who landed in the New Hebrides, Vanuatu, and named the region Australia del Espiritu Santo. There on the day of Pentecost 1606 he spoke the destiny of Australia, almost 100 years before it was discovered by the Englishman who was Lieutenant James Cook, not Captain, etc. So, yeah.
But he didn't discover it, that's the whole point.
No.
He already knew where it was, that's why he had secret orders.
Secret orders to go there.
Alternative
totally.
to Australia. And sailed down to 71 degrees 10 south by 168 east.
Yeah.
And ran into a wall of ice. And of course, coming back up, he saw and recorded a comet. First time for the English to record a comet. And when you had 8 days to that, which is my birthday.
69th birthday, 2013. 2 months later, Benedict announces, I've met him finally via the email.
Benedict was a beast, of course, because he headed up the Catholic Church. And before him was the greatest monster of all time.
Yeah.
That was John Paul II. And he loved him. So the man was so naive that there's this monster, this Jew, that the world adored, handing over the world, if you like, to the Jews. Yes. Right? And then saying, we are all God.
Yeah.
Well, hello. So this is the naive position of Benedict. So once I got into him, I soon straightened him out.
Yeah, it was like, uh-oh.
I found me, you're fucked, right? So he did. He backed up.
Well, he humbled himself. He got sliced and diced to start with.
So then we straightened him out, and so he knew who he was talking to.
Yes. Diane, you can't click the link from the chat room, but I'll get it later. Read all about that. But yes, we're on the radio, July the 16th, talking to, what's the fat guy and, what was his name? Good Morning Australia. What was it?
That dickhead from Australia.
Yeah. The guy that interviewed you.
Sandilands,
Kyle Sandilands and his offsider. I got on there first. Jackie O, that's right. Now, somebody might like to turn up. That must be in the archives over at the Michelle Nye site somewhere. That came about because my sister Danae, knowing about Brian, she phoned me on her way to work and said, they're having people Jesus lookalikes phone in to speak to these two. So I phoned and I told the guy that asked me what was I going to talk about, and I said, well, the Christ is in Australia. They phoned me back. Anyway, we got on. So I gave my brief blah, blah, blah. And then Brian was standing by in Melbourne, so they switched to Brian, and he was interviewed for several minutes, uninterrupted. You got quite a bit of information out. And then you had another interview, didn't you?
6 different times.
Yeah, there were other interviews that came from that on different...
It was a network of Australian
network, that's right.
broadcasting.
That's right.
And they all wanted her to go, so I thought, well, that's interesting from Melbourne and Sydney, Italy.
Right.
And next thing, they're phoning me up for another interview.
Yes. And somewhere in all of our boxes, we've got the original CD of that interview because they sent it to us.
Yeah.
Interesting. Now, what is interesting too is that Jackie O, when the interview is finished, not that we heard this, but she said she didn't believe, but Kyle Sandilands goes, but what if he really is? Like, you know.
Well, he actually is a smart man. Likeable sort of character, actually. And she's given me a heap.
Yes.
And he says, what if it is him?
Yeah, but what...
Like, think about it. What if it is him?
Yes.
It's got to be coming back someday.
Yeah.
That's how we talk, right?
Now, the kicker of it is that his current lady in his life is a girl who is a model from Bowral, Southern Highlands, where all my family is, and which is where I found you from, 2 Tulip Close in Bowral.
That's right.
And I have tried to contact him since, and of course it goes nowhere. With that, it's the end of the show.
Okie dokie then.
All right, everybody over in the chat room, click the link. Yeah, all right. Everybody in the chat room, thank you for being there. And Rodney, hello to you too. And anybody else? Russ, I've already said hello to you. Diane is there. John Hall's been there. And yeah, later gang. Hasta la vista,
baby.
Oh, wait on. We can't go out unless we do this. We've got to have this.
The Go Lightly Martial Art on freedomtalkradio.net.
Now we can go. Tomorrow. Bye-bye.